I'm sure at this point you probably think you've had just about enough of headers and footers, but I want to use our header and footer while we're here to talk about quick parts. We've used quick parts quite a few times already in this document. We started by using a cover page, and the entire cover page was a quick part, and then we used more in our footer. Quick parts are a new way of saving reusable content. We don't have to use what Word provides us, though. We can actually create our own content or our own quick parts. For example, we probably need to create footers in more than just our business plan document. So instead of having to recreate it and remember all the formatting, we can save it as a quick part and then reuse it. Let's scroll up just a little bit so we can see this footer a little bit more clearly, and let's also take a second just to do some quick formatting. We select it like we've done before, go to the Home tab. If I have 11 or 12 point type in the body of my document, I typically like to make headers and footers either 9 or 10 point. Sometimes we make them italicized to make them stand out. We could change the font color a little bit if we want. And we could even add things like a top border to help separate the footer information from the document itself. So, with just a couple of clicks, we've updated and customized our footer. This is what we want to be able to recreate in other documents. Anytime you want to create a quick part, simply select the information first. Have it formatted and laid out exactly the way that you want it. Then we'll go to Insert, and we'll choose Quick Parts. We could have used the Design Contextual tab and the Quick Parts option there as well. They both are exactly the same thing. Here we're going to go ahead and move all the way to the bottom and simply choose Save Selection to Quick Part Gallery. Notice that it tries to be kind of smart. It tries to figure out what we're going to say, but we're actually going to call this just You Got It Footer. We then have an option to save it to any variety of galleries. We can save it just to the default quick parts, we can save it as auto text, cover pages, or in our case, let's go ahead and save it to footers. We also could create an entire variety of different categories. For example, if we're a training company, maybe we have different categories of things for different types of things that we create, like instructor outlines versus actual courseware. Normally, I recommend that you actually put in a description, especially if you create a lot of these. We're going to save it in the building blocks, and then, this is important, this is where we can see how and exactly what we're going to be saving. The content only, which means it will be just the content, or the content in its own paragraph, or the content in its own page. Our cover page that we inserted, that Microsoft actually created, was a building part or a quick part as its own page. So everything applied to a page, and then it created everything else on the next page. Since this is a footer, we may be tempted to say content only. But we want to include things like our italics 10-point text and the fact that it's blue. But more importantly, we have tabs, and tabs are paragraph features. So if we don't save it as its own paragraph, it won't include the alignment. Therefore, we'll go ahead and say Insert Content its own paragraph. We'll say OK. And you may be saying, alrighty, but what exactly happened? Well, what exactly happened is we now have that as a quick part and we can reuse it. How do we know? Well, first of all, we saved it as a footer, and that means it's now available in the footer gallery. So by simply clicking on footer like we did when we started our footers, we can go all the way to the bottom and we can see all of our custom ones here. In this case, the You Got It footer is listed. So this is going to be available across documents. It will be available in any document that we create. Perfect. But what if we want to find it a different way, or we didn't save it as a header or a footer or a cover page? We can always go back to Quick Parts, and we can choose to use the Building Blocks Organizer. This is where we get to see everything. We can see different categories like cover pages and equations and even footers. We can also sort things by clicking on it. For example, we can sort alphabetically by name by clicking on that field. So this is a good place to come in and actually see everything that's included with all of the building blocks or quick parts that we have. And it's also where you'll come to see any of the things that you have created. If we go all the way to the bottom, this is where we can see our You Got It footer. We could actually select it, and we could insert it from here, or we could choose to delete it, or we could edit the properties to change something about it. If we're done with this, we simply need to click Close. That brings us back to our actual footer itself. And when we're done with the footer, we want to go back to the Contextual tab, and we can click the Close Header and Footer option. That'll bring us back into our regular document. Once again, it's not anything difficult. We're just using text entry skills as part of, in this case, making a footer. And now we're able to save it for use as a quick part too. This and the other features that we use in long documents are very similar to the features that we use in everything else. In many ways, they're not really necessary, but they're things that we would do if we were making a large house instead of a small house. Instead of one bathroom, we might need to have 2 or more. In this case, instead of 1 footer, we might need to have 2 or more. If we were building a duplex or an apartment building, for example, we need to do things to differentiate one unit from another, like adding apartment numbers. In Word, we differentiate areas using sections and tell a person that they are in another section by using page or section numbering or different headers and footers as well. Now you have the skills to effectively manage long documents, building on skills that you already had, but now just extending those for the long haul.